There is a mountain on this world so tall that its peak stabs straight through the sky and into the freezing vacuum of space. Climb it, cross the edge, and on the other side you would find an entire civilization of people who have no idea your world even exists. Because this is not a planet like ours. This is a cube. 6 flat faces. 6 separate worlds. And the beings living on each one are trapped, alone, cut off from the other 5 by walls of airless rock thousands of kilometers high. It sounds like fantasy. But if the Earth were somehow forced into the shape of a cube, this is exactly what would happen, and the physics behind it is even stranger than it sounds. First, the obvious problem. A cube this big simply cannot exist on its own. Once any world grows past a few hundred kilometers wide, its own gravity becomes so powerful that it crushes rock as if it were soft clay, pulling everything into a smooth ball. That is why every planet, every moon, every star you have ever seen is round. To hold a cube together at the size of Earth, you would need it built, engineered by some impossibly advanced civilization out of a material far stronger than anything we know, just to stop gravity from rounding off its corners. So let us assume they did. A cube with all of Earth's rock and water, pressed into 6 flat faces, each one roughly 10,000 kilometers across. Now the real strangeness begins. Here is the first thing that would break your brain. Gravity does not pull toward the ground beneath your feet. It pulls toward the center of the world. On a round planet those are the same direction, so down is always straight down. But on a cube, only the exact middle of each face sits directly above the center. Start walking toward an edge, and the center of the planet is now behind you and below you. Gravity tilts. The flat ground you are standing on begins to feel like a hill. Keep walking, and that hill gets steeper and steeper until near the edge you are gasping up what feels like a 45-degree slope, even though the ground never actually changed. And the corners? The corners are so far from the center that they behave like mountains 3,000 kilometers tall. Now add water and air, and things get truly alien. Liquids and gases always flow toward the strongest pull of gravity, the center of each face. So the oceans would not spread out flat. Every drop of water on a face would come rushing inward and pile up in the middle, rising into a single colossal dome, an ocean bulging upward like a giant eyeball staring out of the planet. The atmosphere would do the same, pooling thick and heavy over the center, with a pressure hundreds of times greater than anything we breathe. And the edges and the corners? They rise so high they punch clean through the air and stick out into empty space, bare, frozen, airless rock, standing in the vacuum. So where could anyone actually live? Not in the center. The ocean there is unimaginably deep, and the air unbreathably thick and hot. And not near the edges, where there is no air at all, just irradiated rock and vacuum. Life could only cling to a thin band in between, a narrow ring circling each central ocean, where the pressure finally eases to something close to what we know. And here is the haunting part. On a face 10,000 kilometers wide, that livable ring might be just 40 to 100 kilometers across. Every city, every forest, every living thing on that entire face, crammed into a strip thinner than the distance you might drive on a lazy afternoon. This is why each face becomes its own prison. The edges are walls of vacuum kilometers high, impossible to cross without a spacesuit. So 6 civilizations could rise on 6 faces and never once meet, never even suspect that anyone else was out there. And it gets stranger still. Because gravity tilts as you move outward, the people living there would feel the ground curving up all around them in every direction. Their own senses would lie to them. They would swear, absolutely certain, that they lived not on a flat plane, and not on a ball, but at the bottom of an enormous bowl, with the whole world rising up around the horizon like the walls of a valley. And the daily weirdness never stops. With flat faces instead of a curved horizon, the sun would not rise slowly. It would snap across the whole plane almost at once, the entire face lighting up in an instant, so each side would need just a single time zone. Along the edges, where the air from two faces collides, storms beyond anything on Earth could form, monster hurricanes with rain falling sideways, wind strong enough to sandblast the cliffs, flinging mud and stone from one face down onto another. Even space would be chaos. Satellites trying to orbit would get yanked hard every time they raced over a massive corner, their paths wobbling wildly, some flung so violently they would eventually crash straight down into a face. And if you were brave enough, you could stand on a corner at the edge of space, point yourself downhill, and ski a single unbroken slope 6,000 kilometers long, all the way down to the sea. But here is the most beautiful part. The people trapped on this cube, convinced they live at the bottom of a bowl, would never need a rocket to uncover the truth. They would only need to look up on the right night. Because when their world drifted between the sun and their moon, the shadow it cast would not be a soft, round curve like the one Earth throws. It would fall across the moon with impossible straight edges and hard, sharp corners, a shadow no ball could ever cast. And in that moment, an ancient astronomer, standing on a world he thought was a bowl, could look up and realize the staggering truth. He was living on a cube. A world shape decides everything, where the water goes, where life can breathe, even what its people believe is real. But shape is only one rule we take for granted. What if we switched off a different one? What if gravity itself simply vanished, the one force holding your feet to the ground, the air to the sky, and the earth to the sun? What would happen in that very first second? That is next time, on Iffinity.